I'm doing a giveaway for PAX bundles. Stick around till the end of the video to find out how you can win. What is up, everybody? I'm NoLucksGiven here with your afternoon snap, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about High Voltage Overdrive. There's a few different topics that I want to cover, including a review of the new cards coming with High Voltage Overdrive, and some tips that I don't think other people are discussing to take advantage of this mode specifically with the overdrive mechanic. We're gonna get real into the weeds in just a moment, then maybe we'll play some games and I'll show off the deck that I am currently playing in High Voltage Overdrive. But first, let's take a look at this for a brief overview of Overdrive, which is a 4-turn remix to High Voltage mode. Players gain between 2 to 4 energy on turns 1 through 3, and no additional energy on turn 4, which means however much energy you have on turn 3 will be the same amount of energy that you have on turn 4 as well, which will be anywhere from 6 to 12 or more if you are playing Wiccan or something like that, which you probably should be. A little teaser for what's to come. Everyone begins with 8 charged cards in their deck, which you will recognize from as having the surge mechanic on them. They have -1 cost and +1 power. Every time you play a charged card, you add 1 charge to the reactor, which will be up at the top of the screen. I heard someone, I think it was Binks Plays, refer to the reactor as sort of like an additional location that you have every single game that is going to add another effect, kind of random, in the same way that Marvel Snap's 3 locations add some RNG. And I'm specifically, later on in this video, going to dive into the different possible options that you can have for the reactor charge effects and how to build around all of those. The final thing here is, oh yes, that you earn volts and XP by completing missions, and that's going to bring us into some of our controversy here, which is just the amount of volts that these things cost is too damn high. And I almost don't even feel the need to review these cards because I feel like they're not even coming out yet. I feel like most players will not be able to get their hands on these cards, and thus it's just not even worth discussing them because they're too expensive. Now, I personally could afford these cards and I could just buy them with gold, and I'm even thinking about potentially doing that just for the content creation side of it. But I also don't know how interesting that content will be if I'm playing with cards that nobody has. I think that there's like some interesting draw to my content for that potentially, but if nobody else can play with the cards, then like who cares about seeing them in action, right? But I do want to do a little bit of a review of these cards because I did not do so at the start of the season. These cards were not in the season video, and I'll kick it off with Cobra, which I want to say, this is a little bit deceptive. Everybody's talking about, oh, 50,000 this, 50,000 that. Cobra, on average, is going to cost players 30,000, and it is a much, much worse card. So it is a much worse deal to try to go for Cobra. And of course, just take this too. You're going to be unlucky and you're going to pay 45,000 for Cobra, at which point just pay 5,000 more and get Kid Omega, right? And I do think that there is a possibility that the best way to use your volts in the system is farm up as many volts as you can. The shop is going to be available for an additional day after High Voltage Overdrive closes, and you'll be able to have an additional chance to spend your volts, and at that point, then maybe it's like 1,000 gold for Kid Omega if you buy it at the end of the week after accumulating volts the entire time. But who are we kidding? Most people are probably going to grab like the Rocket emote, and this is Mr. Sinister, I believe. Or I'm sorry, this is Forge, right? Yeah, this is Forge. I knew it was a 2/2. And yeah, maybe people grab these. I don't even know if these are good deals. Probably not, but that is not really what I want to get into in this video. What I do want to get into, though, is just talking a wee little bit about Cobra. Is this a good card? I think no. I think that any decks that create cards can usually, my first thought is Thanos. And if you were playing this against a Thanos deck, you destroy one of their stones, that is really, really not worth it on a 2-3 with Activate. The fact that it has Activate means that your opponent will see it coming and could potentially play into it with priority, so that way you're destroying something worse than you kind of intended to. And a lot of times these decks that create things do have just other junk, be it Victoria Hand decks, though destroying Victoria Hand specifically could be good. Destroying like a Snow Guard Hawk form would not be super great. And RSM decks similarly have junk that they could play into Cobra and not really care about it. I do think that there is one pretty good use for Cobra though, and that is in High Voltage Overdrive mode. There are going to be people that unlock Cobra within the next day or two, and then there's going to be more people that unlock it the next day or two after that, as some people are going to get it in their first portal, some people will get it in their second portal, and those people, I do think, will have a reasonable competitive advantage over the field just by having this 2-3 that is kind of pretty good in this game mode specifically. So that is a little bit of awkwardness surrounding all of this, is that Cobra might be good to get now. It's not going to be worth the, you're not going to get 30,000 volts back out of it in value unless you are really, really grinding this game mode. And if you, so what would that have to be? 30,000? No, that would be 1,500 wins in order to have that pay for itself, right? Yeah, because it's 20 volts a win. So 20 times 1.5 thousand would get you back up to the 30,000, right? That's crazy numbers. I don't think people are playing 1,000 games of this in a week. If they are, and yeah, for those people, sure. And in order to get that, you'd have to be, those are just for the wins, right? So you'd have to be playing 3,000 games maybe. And yeah, so I don't know how many people are going to go for that, but some people might just rip open a portal as soon as they hit the first 15,000. And for those that actually get the Cobra, sure, good job. You got there, and you can use it to play in High Voltage Overdrive for the next day that the game mode is available. Kid Omega does seem like a pretty cool card to me, and I think that, yeah, this is a good card. It's just a little bit tainted with all of the economy stuff going on around it, but it does seem like it probably does some pretty cool things. KM Best, I heard, was talking about using it with Nimrod, which seems pretty good, and that's probably one of the better things that you can come up to use this with. The typical Nimrod curves, as the deck currently stands, don't actively want this, but they don't actively not want this either. There is one really cool line that you can make with this card, which is to play it and then play a Shuri on that location. Maybe turn 3 you've played, I don't know, a Fastos or a surged out Galacta. Doesn't matter. Turn 4 you play a Shuri on this location. Turn 5 you activate it and then drop a Nimrod at that location. You get a 12 power Nimrod that immediately destroys itself and then adds 12 power to both of the other 2 locations. That does seem pretty powerful. That could alone just make this worth playing for, as Probst would say, and I think that there's a lot of other synergies that are underexplored with this. Stuff with Elixir and stuff could potentially be good, though I think that Nimrod seems like the best thing to do with it. And I'm not going to get too into exactly what I think you should be doing with this card, because we'll talk about that next month when this card actually releases into snap packs and more players can get their hands on it. One thing that I did want to talk about in this video, though, is the specific reactor. No, not there. Got it. I wanted to talk about the specific effects that can come out of the reactor, and I have a text here that says the different possible scaling effects that can come out of the reactor, and there's 7 of them. And let's see, if I move this here, yeah, this will be fine. Okay, now I can look more forward. I can't put my mouse on the screen. I'm gonna fix my hair a little bit here too. Great. And so there are 7 different scaling effects, and there's also some non-scaling effects that I'll get to in just a moment. I'm actually going to leave these 3 purple ones so purple scaling effects change on the final turn, and those are pretty important to know, because chimichangas, this first one here, the locations would be too full to make use of 4 chimichangas at each location, and 4 chimichangas is really not going to be better than 3 for anyone, because if you haven't played there, then you're losing the location anyways, and chimichangas ain't gonna save it for you. Moving cards, that one is like really random. I think they're just trying to throw a bone in there for people trying out move strategies, which is interesting. And then draw cards, I think that one is fairly straightforward. Drawing cards on the final turn of the game would not help you. So instead, those turn into different abilities that I have listed below. We're going to talk about those in just a second, but I'm not going to get into those right away. So I want to talk about these other scaling effects. The first one is, well, I want to talk about all the scaling effects actually. So, well, maybe not the draw card. Yeah, we'll talk about the draw cards one too. So give each charged card plus 1, 2, 3, or 4 power, no matter where there are. And you've probably already played some of High Voltage Overdrive, so you know what this text means, but the reactor core gets stronger every single turn that you don't activate it. So there can be some strategy to this a little bit, but for the most part, like, you're just gonna want to try to get more advantage out of it than your opponent, which means you're going to want to play your charged cards earlier, so that way, like, if you get 3 cards buffed out of it and your opponent only gets 1 or 2 cards buffed out of it, that winds up being a better deal for you. And there are some weird things with that too, where, like, say you only have an opportunity to play 1 charged card in the first 2 turns. You might just decide to not play that card at all, because then if your opponent plays 4 of them, then they will get so much more of the bonus, and it's pretty difficult for them to play 5 of them. So rather than you playing 1 or 2, you might just decide to play 1 or 0, and that way you won't be giving a bigger buff to your opponent. And that really goes more for this first ability. I'm not sure, it might go for some of these other abilities down the line here as well. We will take a look, but I also want to just discuss what are some cards that work well with these different effects, and figure out how to build your deck around that. These first 2 both just add power to your cards, more or less, in 2 different ways. And for that, I mean, I personally, my mind just goes to Iron Man. Iron Man is a card that has seen play in high voltage mode in the past, and I think that it could be good in High Voltage Overdrive. I'm not personally playing it, but I'm struggling to come up with other cards that care about having additional power on them. I can think of some cards that don't want additional power on them, and thus, so Cards that have 8 power sometimes wouldn't want an additional 2 power, so that way they can dodge Shang-Chi. And I do think that one of the ways that you can build around both of these two scaling effects is what I'm calling them here, but both of these two reactor effects. My hair is just really bothering me. Hopefully that's not too much of a distraction. It's something interesting to look at, right? While we are chatting here. But one way to take advantage of the additional power on cards is to Shang-Chi your opponent. There you go. If something is getting 3 chimichangas in each location, now if you have multiple cards in each location, the chimichangas can go whichever way, but if you only have 1 card in a location, so that way you can spawn all 3 chimichangas, because the chimichangas spawn all at once, so if you only have 1 spot in a location, you're only getting 1 chimichanga. There are some things to keep in mind with that as well. I'll come back to that in just a moment, but you could wind up beefing a 4 power card up to a 6 power card, which makes it Shang-Chi-able, of course. Though a 4 power card, not much investment if that's where your opponent decides to spend their Shang-Chi. What was I? Oh, yeah. So specifically, another great strategy typically in high voltage mode previously was grow wide strategies, and I very commonly used Patriot decks in high voltage mode with Ultron and Doctor Doom. I would go like Patriot, Mystique, Moonstone. I don't think Moonstone was out, but Moonstone could definitely get in those decks now. And then like Onslaught, and then had a backup plan of Onslaught, Living Tribunal, Iron Man maybe. And I think I also had Blue Marvel in those decks as like a different thing to copy with Onslaught. The main game plan though was to go Ultron, Onslaught, Iron Patriot. Like just play those 3 cards and try to win the game. Those strategies are now a little bit worse because you're not going to get your chimichangas out of it, and you probably want to spend some time playing some surge cards as well so that you can get the value out of that, which also means that you're not getting as much value out of Ultron. Like, there's often times where you're going to be playing 3, 4, 5 surged cards, and that is then 3 to 5 less drones, which would have typically been like 6 power drones themselves. So once Ultron is just like losing power across the board, then it just becomes less of a viable strategy. And I think in this game mode, especially with the additional turn, typical high voltage only had 3 turns. High Voltage Overdrive's 4th turn gives you more time to just play bigger cards, which means that playing Ultron was great in those low energy games where you could just play it for 6 and get whatever that is, 8 plus, he gives 24 power, right? Yeah, that card's ridiculous. 24 power on an empty board, but a lot less power on a full up board, and yeah, you're just like not as excited about the drone. So that is definitely some interesting stuff to keep in mind. This move reactor effect is really not one that I have built for specifically at all, and it's kind of random in that it moves 2, 4, and 6 cards, 1 location to the left. I have a different sort of idea about how to make use of the purple text on the screen right now specifically. So we are going to cycle back to that, but specifically for that second one where you move 2, 4, or 6 cards, I think that you want to not activate it. I think that it's also probably true of the chimichangas and maybe true of the draw cards one. That one can obviously be pretty fun, but the move and the chimichangas, I think you kind of want to not activate because of what they could potentially turn into, which is really cool. And also, not playing into both of those reactions is kind of good, because if you play too many cards and then some cards move 1 location to the left, you might be locking yourself out of the left or the middle location in a weird way that you can't plan for. chimichangas, you're not going to lock yourself out of a location unless, oh, Cosmo's kind of dirty. Cosmo's really silly to like play Cosmo and then just lock your opponent's chimichangas into a location. Kind of like that. I'm playing a bunch of on reveal cards in my High Voltage Overdrive deck, so I don't think I'm going to include Cosmo, but it is funny, and it does stop Shang-Chi. Okay, maybe Cosmo's got some legs, and that could be fun. But what I was going to say is, if you don't play Surge cards, and your opponent works really hard to activate the chimichangas, then you are probably getting more value out of those chimichangas than your opponent is. So you're actually kind of rewarded for not playing your surge card in those chimichanga games, and you'll be even more rewarded if you can get to one of those non-scaling effects on turn 4 that we'll cover in just a moment. And let's get through these other ones here. Transform charged cards in play into ones that cost 0, 1, 2, or 3 more. The 0 is really weird, but like it rarely comes up. It's just a matter of kind of limiting what those other numbers can be rather than have it be 1, 2, 3, 4. The 0 is, just not really going to happen. One thing that is worth noting here is that charged cards have +1 power as well, and they will lose that after being transformed, and they could also turn into something random, something bad, especially if you were counting on an ongoing ability of your charged cards. Now, the best charged cards that you can play into this are on reveal charged cards, and that is how you'll get the most value there. Play something like a white tiger, you get the tiger value, and then it gets to transform into a 6-cost card, or potentially even a 7-cost card. If you are, that's probably more likely that your white tiger turns into a 7-cost either RSM. Actually, it might never hit RSM because it's banned in the game mode, so it will probably always transform. Oh, it will. Oh, wow. Okay, so I've been playing some of this game mode, and I'm going to give you a little sneak peek. I've been playing with Cersei, and I just realized I have never, I might have a YouTube short. Yes, I'll have a YouTube short coming out like a few hours after this video, or maybe a few hours before this video. I'm not sure exactly what the schedule on that's going to be. And I transform a bunch of cards with Cersei, and they all transform into either Scar or Death. And I just realized that's because RSM is not in the pool to even be generated from RNG cards. I'm not going to talk too much about the ban list in this video. I was actually given a different ban list than what is currently in the client. I'm not sure if what is in the client is ever going to change, but I was under the impression Gorgon would also be banned, and then I think like 1 or 2 other differences from what actually came through in the client. But it's on the official blog as well. It says Gorgon is banned, but you can play Gorgon, so that's what I'm working with. But I'm also playing Gorgon in my deck now that I know that it isn't banned. But transforming your cards, that does mean that, so it's kind of getting into this. You do have options, not in terms of what charged cards you receive in a given game, but which ones you play, right? So you could, if you're staring down a Professor X and a White Tiger, play the White Tiger, get the value, transform it. Flip side, play the Professor X. This also happened to me in a YouTube short. I kind of don't want to spoil this one, but it was pretty funny. My opponent played a Professor X in a game with this reaction, and that meant that the Professor X did not lock them up on the final turn of the game. It transformed into something else, and I mean, it was good. It was transformed into a 6-cost card, but just funny that you want to make sure you're thinking about that. When you are playing your surged cards, they're going to transform. I had one game where I saw this was the reaction. There was nothing I could do. The cards that I drew that were charged cards, pretty terrible. Sunspot, Nebula, and Silver Sable. So 1-cost cards that all also scale, which is pretty bad because they're going to lose that scaling when they transform. It might look like, okay, there's nothing you can do there, just play your cards out, right? But actually, no. So I had all 3 of those cards in my opening hand, and like imagine I play all those cards, my opponent plays 2 surge cards, and then my cards all transform into different random 1-cost cards that don't have their +1 power on them at this point. That would actually be pretty bad for me. So instead, what you can do is hang on to these cards and play them on turn 4. So that way they are at least transforming into cards that cost 3 more. Or if not turn 4, try to get a read on when your opponent is likely to trigger the reactor and play them on that turn. So that way you can still get the value of them transforming, but get additional value because the reactor's power increases every turn. Now you might not always want to do that, and this almost has the opposite effect because the cards do lose their +1 power when they transform. You might want to encourage your opponent to transform the reactor in a way by playing 1 or 2 of your charged cards, so that way more of their cards get transformed and then you can play your cards post-reaction. So this has a little bit of different play to it from the first one. The next one is destroy the lowest power cards for each player, and on ties, choose one at random. I did already upload a YouTube short featuring this one, Culling the Week, which was really funny. I did not know that it was random. I thought that it used timestamp order. And honestly, based off my video, I feel like it was timestamp order. But if this says random, sure, it's random. I have been seeing a lot of people playing Destroy in this game mode, specifically that Nimrod Destroy that I was just discussing, and oftentimes my opponents are creating situations where Nimrod is somehow the lowest powered card that they have. I think that Destroy effects can also work synergize with this pretty interestingly, because you can use Carnage and Venom and even Deathlock to destroy your surged cards, so that way this Call the Weak effect does not wind up re-destroying those surged cards anyways. Now, for a normal deck, if you just have some, I do kind of build with this in mind in the deck list that I'm going to showcase. I have some things that are specifically kind of like fodder in an interesting way that allow me to say, White Tiger is just the best example. It is going to be my lowest power card, and I don't care about it. Sometimes I care about it, but yeah, for the most part, willing to sacrifice the Tiger and have my power go elsewhere, but you can build into this one a little bit heavier. I personally am a little bit shying away from trying to come into High Voltage Overdrive with a deck based too much on synergy, because your deck is going to be diluted. And I think that this is a fair criticism of the game mode, people saying deck building doesn't matter and that makes the game mode less fun. And yeah, I hear that. Certainly not everyone is an RSM enjoyer, and they basically just gave us an RSM game mode. I am very much an RSM enjoyer, and I love having that 4th location every game in the form of the reactor, but I can understand if this isn't for everyone. And yeah, people that are playing more synergistic decks, be it Destroy or a Silver Surfer deck or, whatever. I'm not gonna, I can't think of what else people are trying to play. Oh, you know what? I have seen some people try out bounce related things. But doing those things, I don't think is going to be as effective as just playing good stuff, which is kind of lame, right? But these, knowing that 1 out of every 7 games you're going to be able to Call the Weak is an interesting incentive to build around Destroy. And I think that that's fun for the people doing it, and you can probably make some other fun stuff happen out of the other locations. Maybe you get a bunch of chimichangas on a Deadpool. Seems tough, but if you were able to pull it off, that could certainly be a lot of fun. Here is the reaction effect, if any, that I am building around the most though. Repeat 1 through 4 random on reveals for each player. Now I will say, The Destroy deck is also pretty fun in how it can take advantage of this effect, re-triggering Venom and Carnage to blow up Nimrod multiple times over. That is pretty cool. And one thing that you do have to watch out for too is this only hits 1 through 4 random on reveal cards. If you build around too many on reveals, then there's going to be a wide variety of targets that this can hit. I have a really fun YouTube short that it's actually the one that I was talking about with Death and Scar that features this reaction. And yeah, it can just do some wacky stuff. I have built my deck around it specifically. I'll probably play a game towards the end of this video, and hopefully we'll get this reaction. And yeah, this one can just be a ton of fun. This last one I think is also pretty cool too, and does help out the Destroy decks again. So maybe looking at it, there are enough things in here for a Destroy deck to take advantage of, and I'll probably try it out before the week is over. There's no, all you lose is time in playing high voltage mode. You don't lose tickets or energy or whatever, so I'll try out a variety of different decks, but I just want to share the main deck that I am playing so far. So each player draws 2, 3, or 4 cards. Does allow you to build around some neat synergy, and their costs all become 3. A little bit of an Esme reduction is obviously pretty powerful as well. I do right now want to get into, as we talk about another purple effect here, the non-scaling abilities that you can access if you don't charge up the reactor on turn 3. So on turn 4, Chimichanga, Move, and Draw will turn randomly into one of these 3 reactions, which are crazy ones. Destroy 2 locations with the lowest powers. If there's a tie, leave one at random. Winner of this game gets twice as many volts, and each player adds a blob to a random location if able. I have actually not played a game yet with the first one, and I think that there's an interesting dynamic there because, yeah, it really changes how the game is played in a pretty cool way that honestly, I think I want to spend some more time unpacking, but the important thing there is it's going to destroy the locations at the end of the turn. So it will calculate total power at the end of the turn, then it will destroy the 2 lesser locations, and then it will say, then it will look at who wins that location, and whoever wins that location wins the game. So a really interesting dynamic, and I do think that it's one that my deck is like somewhat set up for, but of course the best thing for a location like that is going to just be Iron Man Onslaught, and if you can prepare for that, then that is super sweet. Now, I'll just talk a little bit about game theory optimization stuff. So this second one, the winner of this game gets twice as many volts. That location or that reaction specifically is why I think you should not be playing charged cards in any of these purple games for the draw cards, the move cards, and the chimichangas. You should be trying to get the winner of the game twice as many volts, right? Kind of. If you can instead more likely secure a win, then like, yeah, you can kind of play for yourself because your opponent getting twice as many volts does not help you in any capacity. You'd rather just get 1 times as many volts and actually win the game. So I think that there's like an interesting kind of social dilemma that comes up with that one, but I'm personally going to try to play for it as much as I possibly can by not activating the reactor until the final turn, and then hoping that I can win the game still on that final turn. If my opponents don't cooperate though, I think that at some point people might start to cooperate, but people don't exactly know all of this information. So yeah, that's part of the reason I'm getting out there. Chimichangas, Move, and Draw, Skip. and hope to get double the volts. But there is some randomness because you might not get double the volts. You might get a Galactus game or you might get a Blob game, which add a lot more RNG into it in a pretty fun way, I think, especially with like nothing really on the line, right? Maybe these will get old. They come up so infrequently. Like I said, I haven't even seen the Galactus one, this first one here below me yet. I have seen the Blob one. I actually haven't seen the twice as many volts. I've only seen the Blob one, and I was able to sequence it so that, like, most likely whatever location the Blob showed up at, I would be able to win. And I think there was like one permutation that didn't work out for me. So there was only 6 different things that could happen. Let me try to think. If it went there. Yeah, so it was a 1 in 6 that I would lose, but 5 out of 6 that I would win with the Blob. And that's pretty good odds for me, I would say. Right? Am I thinking about all that right? Yeah, I think that I did that math right. Yeah, so that was a fun, like, interesting puzzle to try to play around, and you can fill your locations up so that you don't get the Blob and stuff like that. You almost, like, you're incentivized to fill your locations where you're already winning, which is a unique dynamic because you want your Blob to appear at a different location. Most of the times, your Blobs are still going to have enough food left in the deck because of the charged cards that the game mode adds to your deck. The Galactus charge effect, I think, is pretty interesting. So it says destroy the 2 locations with the lowest powers. So I think what it's doing in that scenario is it is adding up your power and your opponent's power at all 3 different locations and then just comparing them and looking at the total power. And that's why I think if you have Iron Man Onslaught at a location, what's that? That's 32 just by itself, more if you throw on some other stuff on top of that. So I think that will, like, guarantee that becomes the location that you're playing for. And then the other locations will get destroyed and they won't even matter. One thing to pay attention with that is if you have ongoing cards in other locations and you destroy those locations, of course, then you won't have that power to rely on. So if you're doing something weird like a Blue Marvel Onslaught game plan or Patriot Onslaught game plan to add a bunch of power to one of the other 2 locations, then you're going to wind up blowing yourself out of the game because you'll just be left with a bunch of drones or whatever by the end of it. So that is, I think, mostly what I wanted to say on these different reaction effects and how to potentially get more out of them. If you have some other ideas, definitely let me know in the comments below. But now I want to take a look at my deck in high voltage mode. And you know what? We're doing pretty well so far. Maybe we can get this whole thing done in one cut. No edits here. And let's take a look at my high voltage deck. Oh yeah, there's the ban list. Mysterio's a weird one. We can take a look at the ban list real quick. Mysterio's a really weird one because I think it was banned originally because it's an end of turn or it's an end of game effect. But I think they fixed those because, like, Dracula isn't banned here. So that's kind of interesting. Black Widow, Kang, that has to be banned. Eliath has to be banned, I think, too. These ones were interesting to see. They banned these cards because they would be a little bit stronger than they would otherwise. And similarly, Agatha would actually be a little bit stronger than she would otherwise. Now, Agatha for 2 reasons. One is that you just get to start with her in your opening hand, but the second reason is that there's like reasonable chance you can just play her by turn 2, at which point she wouldn't have that much of a drawback. And yeah, she'd be a fairly reasonable card at that. Thanos, Agamotto, Arishem, Galactus, these are fairly straightforward power level bans. Thanos has the same thing starting in your opening hand. Let's take a look at my deck now. I think I just leaked it a few moments ago, but here is what we have got. I guess I don't need this Merlin thing. I'll just keep Merlin up there because that was the last video that I filmed. I had Merlin, but this is my High Voltage Overdrive deck. I'm going to go over all of the card choices that I made, but there's a lot of different other options that you can play. The first thing that I'll say is I feel like ongoing effects, certainly there's some combos in this deck, right? Like you want to go Wong into White Tiger into Odin, or Wong into Kahori into Absorbing Man Odin. Like different things like that are certainly more powerful than when you don't have the synergies. But I think that most of these things work in a fairly, I think the word is modular way, where you can swap out the pieces willy-nilly and you're not really relying on drawing Nimrod specifically or Hela specifically. You can just draw some of your pieces and not draw some others and have it all kind of come together. Blink and Cersei, I'll get back to. Blink and Cersei are not really combo cards in the traditional sense, especially in terms of how Blink typically gets seen. You'll see this curve's actually fairly low. I'm only playing one 6-cost card. I do want to talk about Infinity Ultron. I put out a YouTube short talking about this already, but Infinity Ultron I think is possibly the best card in this game mode, and that's why I built the deck the way I did. Infinity Ultron is basically a one-card combo in how it adds cards to your hand that combo with itself, and the extra energy from High Voltage mode allows you to not only make use of those Infinity Stones, but also go above and beyond with those Infinity Stones, copying them with Absorbing Man or Odin or Wong, or using any of those aforementioned effects actually just to get more stones. That's what I find myself doing the most often, is just going Infinity Ultron into Absorbing Man, or Infinity Ultron into Odin, or Infinity Ultron on Wong. Sorry to belabor that, but just to get more stones, I have found is really powerful and really fun as well, and plays into some nice synergies. An earlier version that I had of the deck leaned even harder into that. I had Grandmaster. I'm briefly tried out Prodigy. I'm talking like one game. I'm not sure what else I tried, if I ever tried Frigga. I don't think so. I think this was mostly it. You could also go like Arnim Zola to go even like crazier over the top, which destroys Infinity Ultron and adds some more copies of it. And I do think that there is potentially room for a game plan like that, Arnim Zola, and then maybe working in like a Black Panther combo into this. And maybe Blob as well. Blob, Arnim Zola could work. That adds 2 zeros to your deck, but just trying to Arnim Zola Blob with those extra charged cards with that +1 power on them could certainly be a viable strategy. But Infinity Ultron is the main one that I'm going for here, and then there's a little bit of support and a little bit of, I want to say, hedging for the game mode and for potential bad draws and things. So to start off here, I am playing both Gorgon and Mobius. Both of these give +1 cost to enemy charged cards, and in the case of Mobius, it stops opposing Gorgons as well. So it's kind of the better of the two, but with a 20 card deck, do you think it's possibly worth playing both of them? Playing either of these, or I'll say having either of these in play and having that extra tax for your opponent just gives you more control over the reactor, and it basically, I mean, these cards are, well, Gorgon's interesting, right? Because RSM and Thanos, like all of that stuff is banned, but also everyone's playing RSM, so it's kind of good again. Mobius, everyone knows though, is just a fantastic card, so I've got no problem playing this. And what I was getting at is that by putting that tax on your opponent and then thus having more control over the reactor yourself, it's kind of like I want to say like having access to Reality Stone in a typical game of Marvel Snap, or Scarlet Woman, or Legion, because you have control over the fourth location, being the reactor core. So I think that those cards are both pretty cool in that capacity. It's a little bit hard with Mr. Freeze effects to tell when they are actually doing their job and when they aren't, but I think that they are nice ones, and I could see cutting them though. I don't think that they're like super necessary. I just think that, I don't know, something appeals to me about like having control over the reactor and just trying to get a little bit more value wherever you can, right? I wanted to play, so originally Esme was the only 3-cost card that I had in this deck before I put Mobius in. I wanted to have a 3-cost card in case I needed to spend 3 energy on the first turn and still fill out my Wiccan curve, which is like certainly not the most important thing in the game. I think that Esme could probably go in this deck, like could probably get the boot, and honestly some of the cards that I had named previously, Grandmaster, Prodigy, those could be fine. This deck actually does do some interesting things with Prodigy specifically. I probably have a YouTube short coming out where I used a charged Prodigy that I got, yeah, that'll be a fun clip as well. Just trying to think of like some other things that I could maybe replace the Esme with, but honestly, she's fine. Another chance to potentially grab the Odin is pretty cool, and she does do some interesting things with Blink and Cersei. Kind of talked about this in my recent Merlin video called the Magic Trick deck. This Merlin deck is absolutely magical or something like that. So if Esme copies a White Tiger, obviously, it's fantastic to start with, and then you can play the White Tiger for 3, and then you can Cersei it or Blink it out, and it'll get you a 6-cost card, which is usually Odin in the Blink terms, but could be other things if you have other charged cards in your deck. I want to talk about Blink and Cersei now because these are weird cards in this list, especially with Odin as my only 6, and then like the best card in this deck that you can blink is the White Tiger, and then it always blinks into Odin. Now, I think that's kind of fine, like to more reliably be able to hit that Odin. If you have, I do want to say, if you have a charged 6-cost card in your deck, I do believe that Blink will still be able to hit that, because I think that Blink looks at the actual cost of cards, but there's a chance that she wouldn't, and she would potentially only be able to hit like a Death or a Scar that's been charged and added to your deck. I don't know all of those specific idiosyncrasies, but for the most part, actually, Blink is in here to blink your charged cards out, actually. It's when you hit a 0 or 2-cost charged card that just is like not super high impact. That's what Blink is in here for, and that is also what Cersei is in here for. Now, these cards can still do some interesting things and do have some synergies with the cards that we're already playing. You can blink out Gorgon and Mobius to get additional value out of them. And Cersei specifically is the really fun one, because oftentimes I am Cerseiing into Wong, or I am using Odin to re-trigger the Cersei. You can also use Odin to re-trigger Blink, and it will blink whatever the last thing you played is. So you could like weave in a 0-cost card. You could go 0, Blink, 0, Odin the Blink, and you'll blink the 0 again. So there are some cool things that you can do with just re-triggering Blink, but re-triggering Cersei is just a fun way to get a bunch of power in one location. And what else do I want to talk about here? Wiccan, sometimes you can play it on turn 1, and then you just win. So that's fairly straightforward. Kahori, I think, is an inclusion that will it's not a card that people typically think of as like super powerful, and there's not that much hand generation in this deck. It is just Esme, Infinity Ultron, potentially like, you know, getting multiple uses out of some of those effects, to be sure. And then it's also the fact that you draw 2 cards each turn in high voltage mode. But really, I just wanted a card that could continue to add power onto the board in like a Blue Marvel or Claw capacity. And I think that Claw could be a fine card in a different version of this deck, but of course I'm already playing so many different ways to make use of on-reveal abilities, so Wong, Kahori, Absorbing Man, Odin, these kind of things do actually lead to pretty reasonable lines. And also, I found Kahori is just really good at catching my opponents off guard because they're not expecting me to be able to add more power to filled up locations. And so I typically am saving Kahori for the final turn, even though that means that she is less power, or I am playing her in a way where I'm going to re-trigger her again on the final turn with Absorbing Man and Odin. So there is a short little breakdown of the deck that I am currently playing in high voltage mode, and I think let's give it a spin. I'm only going to play one game here. Hopefully we can get a fun one. If not, check out my YouTube shorts with this deck mostly. Most of my YouTube shorts. Oh, wow. We get the turn 1 Wiccan. Oh, goodness gracious. I mean, yeah, like, if only you could snap in this game mode. We also got Odin charged, which seems to happen like a decent amount. We could even Wong and set up for Wiccan, but I think we just do this. And then it's repeat on reveals. Okay, this is a crazy one. You can get charged versions of cards that are in your deck, which is dissimilar to RSM and pretty powerful. So now we can Odin the Wiccan, but I don't even know if I want to waste my Odin here. Oh, well, I got another one. I got another one. Sure, let's see what happens if we do this. I forgot how sweet the high voltage music is. I haven't been playing on the PC. I mentioned this being at the top of the screen. It's at the top of the screen on mobile, but obviously not on PC. This is wild. This is funny for no other reason than, yeah, this is absolutely ridiculous. I think, oh, maybe this isn't a bot, or maybe they changed how bots display. This could be a bot. I have 24 energy. Okay, and I can no longer activate Wiccan with an Odin. That's fine. I'm going to lose my blink. Nice. That was not necessary. That did not need to be my blink that went away there. So if I Cersei over in London, this will become a 7. These will both become 6s. Oh, I probably want to grab some Esmade cards, huh? This gives me 2 Esmade cards. This gives me 2 Esmade cards. That might be better. So basically I'm thinking like we can fill up our hand with Esme, potentially look to make some Esme plays, but then also just look to make some big Kahori plays too. I can do this pretty freely, actually. Let's do it like this. And I think I'm just playing Kahori Odin on the final turn. We'll see what this turns into. This could grief me, maybe. Okay, nope, looks good to me. And then yeah, this one turns into a Scar. So yeah, there could be some benefit, actually, if we had Cersei'd everything, so that way Kahori was like my only on-reveal. But now, Kahori might be my on-reveal, or there's a chance that Odin becomes my on-reveal and repeats all of this stuff anyways, which would also just be absolutely fantastic. Awkwardly, Kahori has to hit a 50-50 to wind up in Weapon X, because I didn't draw anything else that I can play to Crimson Cosmos. Which is also awkward because I'm relying on my opponent a little bit to... Oh, and they played a Nocturne. So I could just do this. That might be better. Play Proxima, then do this, then do this. Yeah, this seems better. It's going to get me... Is Proxima actually worth playing? Yeah, it certainly is, especially if Sinister London's active. But my opponent has priority, which is pretty cool. I've played around Shang-Chi here now. And let's see if they also drop 2 more Surged cards and allow me to go crazy at the end of the turn. They are going to play for Sinister London, actually. So we'll get to see Kahori in full weight here. I also dodged the Shang-Chi, which feels absolutely beautiful, baby. And then we get to Kahori a bunch of times for 4 each time. Now, it's not that many times, but it will be just enough points to put me ahead in Utopia. Actually, we're going to re-trigger Esme here twice before re-triggering Kahori 2 more times for 6 each, which will definitely put me ahead in Utopia. Oh, and then I get 2 more, 1 more Esme, and then 2 more Kahoris for 7, which might even put me ahead in Sinister London as well. And then we repeat on reveals. We're not done yet. Hold on. Do I get some more Kahori activations? They're gonna wasp me again. If I get another Kahori, they blink. Oh no. Oh, the Shang-Chi reactivated. Oh no, Kahori. Okay, Odin reactivated. So that is going to once again activate Kahori and grow me up in Weapon X facility. I did not think about the Shang-Chi re-triggering there, taking over Sinister London. My opponent could have won this game if they played Shang-Chi first and got that into Utopia, but they missed that play, as did I. But we are able to grab the win with a full hand. It would be crazy if Kahori could come back over and win in Sinister London. I don't think that she can, though. But this is absolutely wild. I don't know how many... Because I don't know. I think, like, Odin activated, and then I think Kahori activated. Dracula's going to discard nothing, and we grab the win. There we go. That was a really sweet one. I'm NoLucksGiven. Peace. So here's how I'd like to do my giveaway for PAX bundles. I've got 6 of them, courtesy of Second Dinner, to give away, and I've done similar contests like this before where you can comment on my videos and enter for a chance to win. And I'm going to do the same thing this time. Every time you comment on one of my videos, limit once per video, but you can comment on every single one of my videos this season, and that will give you another entry. So if I upload 50 videos this season, you could enter up to 50 times. I'm not going to do any type of like code word or anything like that. It would make it a little bit easier on me, but I want anyone that comments anything to be eligible to win, even the people that have already commented on my videos the past 2 weeks for this season. And you can still go back and comment on those old videos if you want a chance to win. But here is what I am requiring. You to join my Discord. The link is in the video description. That is just going to be so much easier for me to give the winners their codes. Sometimes people win and I respond to their comments and I tell them to email me, and like spam filters pick that up, or people just don't receive the notifications on YouTube. So it will be a lot easier for me if you join my Discord. That is not the purpose of it. I do not care if people join my Discord. It is just going to make it easier for me to tell you if you have won this giveaway. So leave a comment on any of my videos and join my Discord so I can tell you if you've won something.